When you think about Somali piracy, I bet the first thing that jumps to mind is that Maersk Alabama hijacking, right?
Oh, absolutely. Captain Phillips, the whole dramatic rescue, it was huge news.
Totally terrifying. And it really cemented this image, didn't it? Somali pirates as just the bad guys, the villains.
It did. But that one event, as dramatic as it was, it's really just scratching the surface of a way more complicated story.
And that's what we're digging into today. We've got this video essay source, and it really gets into the history, the context, even firsthand accounts.
Yeah, our mission here is to look beyond that simple villain narrative. We want to understand, how this all started and how it changed over time.
It's kind of amazing when you think about it, these tiny little boats trying to kick over these massive container ships. Seems almost impossible.
It really does.
And the video essay points out this weird contrast from the start terrifying pirates to the world. But back home, some Somalis apparently saw them as, like, heroes, their own Robin Hoods.
Exactly. That contradiction alone tells you there's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Okay, so where do we even start untangling this? What are the roots?
Well, you really have to go back to the collapse of Somalia itself. The video reminds us, Somalia gets independence in 1960.
Right.
But then things go south pretty fast. Dictatorship by 1969 after President Abdirashid Ali is assassinated, and there's a military coup.
And the video made a point about how the dictators specifically used clan identities, right, to sort of divide and conquer.
That's a crucial point. Clan identity is fundamental in Somali society, but the regime weaponized it, deepened those divisions.
Different from, say, religious or racial divisions we might see elsewhere.
Exactly. And these manipulated divisions, they festered, and ultimately they were a key factor in the complete collapse of the central government in 1991.
Which triggered a massive civil war between rival clans. Just chaos.
Total power vacuum. And the consequences were, frankly, horrific. The video highlights this stark figure. Within about a year, something like 350,000 people died.
350,000. From starvation and disease linked to the war.
Yes, just unimaginable suffering. And that level of desperation, that chaos, it really sets the stage for what comes next.
And didn't part of the country try to break away around that?
That's right. Northern Somalia declared independence as Somaliland. Still not widely recognized internationally, but it shows the fragmentation.
So total state collapse, mass suffering, and then there's the coastline. What was happening offshore?
Well, ironically, the Somali coast is incredibly rich, teeming with marine life, tuna, sardines, shrimp, you name it, a real natural resource.
But with no government.
Exactly. No government meant no Coast Guard. Suddenly, these incredibly valuable fishing grounds were completely unprotected, wide open.
And that's when the foreign fishing fleets moved in.
Massively. Illegally exploiting Somali waters on an industrial scale. The UN estimated, back in 2006, that about $300 million worth of seafood was being stolen every year.
300 million. That's staggering. That's not just stealing fish, that's stealing people's livelihoods.
Precisely. It completely undermined the local coastal communities. And it wasn't just the volume, like you said. The methods they used were devastating.
The video mentioned those steel drag nets.
Yeah, basically scraping the seabed clean. They destroyed coral reefs, wiped out fish stocks for the long term, just ecological vandalism.
And if local fishermen complained.
They were often met with violence, shot at, blasted with high-pressure water cannons, just completely overpowered.
So their resources plundered, their environment damaged. But then it got even worse, didn't it? The toxic waste dumping?
Yeah. This is maybe the most shocking part. Starting in the 80s, but really ramping up after 91, European companies started illegally dumping toxic waste.
Toxic waste? Like what?
Hazardous stuff. Uranium, lead, mercury, industrial chemicals, dumped on land, dumped directly into the sea.
By who? Just random criminals?
No. The video points to actual registered waste management companies like Acher and Partners, Progresso Sri, basically traffickers.
Yeah.
And the motive, pure profit.
How much cheaper was it?
Dramatically cheaper. The essay quotes figures like maybe $250 a ton for proper disposal in Europe versus just $2.50 a ton to dump it in Somalia.
$2.50 versus $250. That's obscene.
It is. And it led to this awful system the video calls guns for waste.
Guns for waste.
Yeah, local warlords or clans would get weapons in exchange for letting the dumping happen. So it poisoned the land and fueled the conflict.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the dumping and the fishing were linked.
Often, yes. The same ships might dump waste and then load up with illegally caught fish. It was all part of the same exploitation.
And didn't someone try to investigate this?
Yeah.
A journalist.
Yes,
Yeah.
tragically. Italian journalist Ilaria Alpi and her cameraman Miran Hrovatin were murdered in '94 while looking into this whole trade. There were allegations, involving mafia connections, maybe even peacekeepers turning a blind eye. It's murky.
Just layers upon layers of corruption and exploitation, and the environmental cost. The tsunami really showed that, didn't it?
It did. The 2004 tsunami actually broke open some of these dumped waste containers.
Oh.
Yeah. Contaminated water supplies. People started getting really sick, respiratory infections, bleeding gums, weird rashes, even brain hemorrhages. Doctors reported spikes in cancer rates, just devastating health impacts.
So you've got civil war, famine, disease, your fishing grounds are gone, and now your home is literally poisoned. It feels like something had to give.
Exactly. And that's where you see the first stirrings of what would become piracy. Initially, it wasn't about ransom.
What was it then?
Local fishermen started banding together, calling themselves coast guards, trying to physically stop the illegal fishing boats, protect their waters.
So it started as self-defense, protecting their livelihoods.
Pretty much. Confronting the illegal trawlers, sometimes attacking them, trying to chase them off.
But then it shifted. How to go from defense to demanding ransoms?
Well, it seems they realized that seizing these foreign vessels, especially the fishing boats initially, could be profitable. They teamed up with some of the local armed groups, militias, that sort of thing.
Like the Somali Coast Guards or National Volunteer Coast Guards mentioned in the video.
Exactly. And you have to remember the context. Extreme poverty, no jobs, widespread hunger. For many young men, piracy suddenly looked like the only way to feed their families.
Desperation turns into an opportunity, I guess. A really dangerous one.
And it didn't stay small scale for long. The tactics evolved.
Right. The video talked about moving from basic fishing boats to faster speedboats.
Yeah, getting better weapons, GPS devices to track ships. It became more professional in a grim sort of way.
And certain areas became hotspots, like Puntland.
Yes, Puntland, which had declared itself autonomous, became a major hub, a safe haven, effectively. The town of Isle was notorious for years, the pirates' capital.
And it wasn't just fishermen anymore, right? It became like an industry.
Totally. Organized gangs emerged.
Yeah.
You had recruiters pulling young men in, financiers putting up the money for boats and weapons.
Financiers, like investors.
Yeah, expecting a cut of the ransom. You had mission commanders planning the operations. It became quite structured.
How did the actual hijackings work?
Typically, they'd use speedboats, maybe a larger mothership further out, approach the target vessel, use guns to intimidate, throw up ladders.
Those long ladders against the side of a huge ship.
Yep. Success rates weren't super high, maybe 20–30% according to the video, but when they got on board, they could usually take control pretty quickly, maybe within half an hour. Then they'd steer the ship towards the Somali coast, to a friendly port.
And then the ransom. How did that part work? It sounds crazy.
It was pretty organized, bizarrely. Negotiations would start. The payments were often handled through financial channels in places like London or Dubai.
Seriously. And the delivery.
Often by airdrop. A plane would fly over and literally parachute bundles of cash onto the deck of the hijacked ship.
You're kidding. Parachuting cash.
That's what the sources say. And then the money got divided up.
How?
There was a system. A share for the hijackers on the boat, a share for the investors, money for the guards watching the hostages, translators. Even sometimes a portion went to the local community.
Ah, okay, so that's where the Robin Hood idea comes in again, spreading some wealth locally.
Exactly. It explains that complex perception. And it's interesting, the pirates often referred to themselves as, what was it? Badadinta Bada,
Which means?
saviors of the sea, or Coast Guard, harking back to those original motivations, even as it became about profit.
So it really developed its own business model.
Absolutely. Investors provided capital for boats, fuel, weapons, food, everything needed for a mission, expecting a return.
And it was profitable.
Hugely profitable. By 2008, the video says piracy was basically Somalia's #1 industry, generating maybe $50 million in ransom just that year.
$50 million in 1 year. Wow. And overall?
Estimates in the source put the total ransom paid between 2005 and 2012 somewhere between $339 million and $413 million.
Incredible sums. Were there any particularly big ones?
Oh, yeah. The video mentions the Saudi supertanker, the Sirius Star, in 2008. Ransom was reportedly $3 million.
The super tanker?
Yep. And a Greek tanker, the Smyrni, in 2013, allegedly went for $9.5 million.
$9.5 million. Who pays that kind of money?
Shipping companies, mostly. often covered by kidnap and ransom insurance policies, which became pretty standard for operating in the area. It was almost factored in as a cost of doing business.
Which brings us back full circle, doesn't it, to the Maersk Alabama. That incident really changed the game internationally.
It absolutely did. An American ship, American captain held hostage that got everyone's attention.
So the pirates took Captain Phillips in the lifeboat.
Right. After the crew put up a fight, and the U.S. Navy responded very quickly, the USS Bainbridge, other warships converged on the scene.
What were the pirates demanding?
$2 million, according to the video, and they were making threats against Captain Phillips. Tense situation.
Didn't he try to escape at one point?
He did, yeah. Jumped overboard but was quickly recaptured. It really escalated things.
And how did it end?
The U.S. Navy positioned SEAL snipers. When they had clear shots at the pirates holding Phillips in the lifeboat, they took them. 3 pirates were killed.
And Captain Phillips was rescued. What about the 4th pirate?
The leader, Abdulwali Musi, he'd actually boarded the Bainbridge earlier, seeking medical help or maybe trying to negotiate. It's a bit unclear. He was taken into custody.
And brought to the U.S.?
Yes, tried, convicted, got a 33-year sentence starting in 2011.
That whole event must have been a catalyst for the international response.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You saw the creation of specific multinational naval task forces like Combined Task Force 151. The EU and NATO launched their own operations. Plus, individual countries, China, Russia, India, sent warships too.
A huge military effort. Did it work?
It certainly contributed to a big drop in successful attacks, especially from 2011 onwards. But it wasn't just the warships.
What else made a difference? The video highlighted armed guards on ships, right?
That seems to have been maybe the single most effective measure. Once shipping companies routinely put armed security teams on board, it just became much harder, much riskier for pirates to even attempt a boarding.
Made sense. Hard to climb a ladder when people are shooting back.
Exactly. Plus, ships started using other tactics, sailing faster through dangerous areas, putting up razor wire, having citadels or safe rooms for the crew, using water cannons, even sonic devices.
Making themselves much harder targets.
Yeah.
Were there changes within Somalia, too?
Yeah, the video mentioned that some Somali clans started to turn against piracy, maybe because of the social disruption it caused, wealth gaps widening, drug use increasing. It upset traditional structures.
So a combination of factors led to the decline.
Right. And for several years, from about 2017 to late 2023, successful hijackings were almost unheard of. It seemed like the problem was largely contained.
It's come back recently. Late 2023, early 2024.
Unfortunately, yes. There's been a noticeable uptick in activity.
Why now? What does the source suggest?
One theory is the diversion of naval resources. With the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, many warships from those international patrols have been redeployed there.
Creating a security vacuum off Somalia again.
Potentially, yeah. A perceived window of opportunity. We saw the hijacking of the MV Rowan late last year, though the Indian Navy eventually rescued the crew and captured 35 pirates.
35 pirates captured in one go.
Yes. And then there was a Bangladeshi ship hijacked in March 24, reportedly released for a $5 million ransom.
So ransoms are being paid again?
Apparently. And there was that very strange incident with a Chinese fishing vessel where the security guards on board reportedly joined the pirates. Ransom was supposedly $2 million.
The security guards joined them. That's weird. And worrying.
It really is. Shows the situation is still volatile and complex. The threat hasn't completely gone away.
It's crucial, I think, to also hear the Somali perspective in all this. The video touched on that, right?
Definitely. It mentioned a survey where something like 70% of Somalis felt piracy was actually a form of national defense.
Because of the illegal fishing and the dumping?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was that powerful quote from a pirate saying, essentially, the real pirates are the ones stealing fish and dumping waste.
It's a whole different frame on it, doesn't it?
It does. And the video emphasizes that while the world focused on stopping the hijackings, the root causes the toxic waste hasn't been cleaned up. There's been no real compensation for the environmental damage. Those issues remain.
International organizations, do they see the link?
They often point to poverty and unemployment as key drivers, yeah. And they note the correlation. Areas hit hardest by illegal fishing often saw the highest rates of piracy.
The video drew a parallel with Nigeria too, right? Oil piracy in the Gulf of Guinea.
Yeah, highlighting similar grievances, local communities feeling exploited by multinational corporations, suffering environmental damage, and resorting to drastic measures.
It's a pattern, almost. There was a final quote in the video that stuck with me about revolution against injustice.
Right, something like, revolting against injustice is a sign of humanity. But if revolution takes the form of more injustice, then it becomes useless.
Acknowledging that complexity, that even if it started from grievance, it often became just crime. Many pirates were just gangsters.
Exactly. It captures that duality perfectly.
So wrapping this up, it's just so clear that Somali piracy isn't this simple story we might have thought. It's not just bad guys on boats.
Not at all. It's deeply tangled up with state failure, decades of foreign exploitation, both fishing and waste dumping, crushing poverty, and, for many Somalis, a genuine sense of injustice.
We saw how that initial reaction, trying to protect their waters, twisted into this highly organized, profitable, and violent industry.
And understanding that local Robin Hood perspective, even if we don't condone the actions, is vital to grasp the whole picture. Plus, seeing how international intervention worked for a while, but how fragile that success might be with this recent resurgence.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Beyond just sending warships, what responsibility does the international community have for the mess that was created in the first place? The fishing, the toxic waste. Should there be some accountability there?
That's the big lingering question, isn't it? What does real long-term justice look like for Somalia in this context? It definitely requires looking beyond just the symptom of piracy.
A lot to chew on there. Thanks for joining me on this really eye-opening deep dive.
Glad to be here. It's a crucial story to understand.
Indeed. Until next time.